Okay.
We're here with Evan Neufeld. He's VP and Senior Analyst at comScore. And let's talk a little bit about the issues driving mobile adoption, especially for advertisers, the kinds of issues they're facing.
Sure, absolutely. I would say the interesting thing about the cell phone is it evolved a little differently from the internet in that when you had the internet, you had a finite amount of people on machines, then you had more people on those machines at faster and faster bandwidth, which increased the advertising opportunity. And when that market really exploded is when you got about 50 million households online, typically at higher access speeds, kind of edging towards broadband. Cell phones, you have this kind of backwards paradigm where you've always had 60–70% of people on cell phones ever since advertisers have been looking at that as an actual viable medium, but you haven't actually had the majority of those phones kind of having fast throughput. So they've always been good at voice, but they haven't been as good as data. And data access and the evolution of the device when you use data is really where you're going to see advertising opportunities for with regard to the mobile platform. So there's the speed at which you access things. Additionally, there's the type of device. There are primarily kind of three types of phones you can have as a consumer. There's the type of phone my dad has, which is a regular phone, which is good for voice and not much else. There's what are called feature phones, which are phones that do maybe one or two things good, like the LG chocolate that plays MP3 players. That's a good camera phone. And then there's smartphones, the iPhone being the most famous example of that. And those are basically small computers within a phone. There's an inverse relationship in terms of the amount of those that are in the market and the advertising opportunity. The biggest advertising opportunity is with smartphones and feature phones. The vast majority of the phones in the market are still these simple, basic phones, which in many cases don't even have color screens. So that's going to retard the growth of advertising as a potential. And the other thing you see from that is, of course, the fact that people who have these more advanced phones do a lot more activities that provide opportunities, environmental opportunities for advertising, such as text messaging, browsing the internet, et cetera, et cetera.
And how about in terms of the metrics, which you guys are obviously involved with? How do you measure the response to advertising, and is that still a problem as well?
I'm trying to grasp the joke here. Very delicately, very carefully, or very generally, depending on how you want to put it. I mean, the truth of the matter is, right now we're at that very parallel to the internet, to in the early days of the internet. We're focusing on trying to understand how consumers are using the tools, how often they do different things. We have two ways we measure consumers. We have a survey that's recall-based, and we have a meter that actually sits on smartphones. So on the smartphone meter, we can get a much more granular idea of kind of traffic, what time of day you went to a site, et cetera, et cetera. However, the whole understanding campaign metrics, understanding what my ROI is, what my response rate is to an ad on mobile is vastly more complicated because you don't have a persistent cookie paradigm like you do on the internet. So I think that's where the real struggle is. We focus mostly on metrics of usage as a proxy for understanding metrics for advertising, but in the kind of banner inventory space, we need to make more progress. In the text messaging space, due to the nature of those, the way they're sent and received and tracked, you can get a pretty good sense of what your response rates are to particular campaigns. It's a pretty big hurdle, I think, for the deployment of banner ads and rich media creative forms, is having a better understanding of what your ROI is on those.
And so at what point do you think we'll be at a point where advertisers will feel more comfortable with it? It obviously has to be numbers and measurement.
Sure. It's all that kind of like, relative to where we were 2 years ago, it's already gone really well. I tend to think of it as line item. When is mobile going to be something an advertiser reaches into their little bag of tricks and deploys with comfort and with some degree of regularity? My own thinking is we're probably 2+ years away from that. That's in terms of measurement standards falling out. That's also in terms of the economics of the business falling out, as well in terms of how you make money, and also advertiser demand. No advertiser or agency likes to spend 100 man-hours to execute a $10,000 campaign. I'm not saying that happens now, but I'm saying probably on some level it happens now, right?
So you'd say a couple of years?
2 years, I think, until we get to that nice, even scale.
Right.
Well, I'm talking primarily in the US. If you looked outside the US, you would see a slightly different story. The UK, a market like India that has a huge amount of SMS activity there, but in the US, given the way the carriers are and where the marketplace is, I think you're looking at 2 years until you have most of those kind of ironed out.
Great, thank you very much.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Okay, was that useful?